During the time of the counterculture revolution, there were many ways people protested. Some protested physically, some wrote books, some wrote poems, and some wrote music. They did this to stop a war and obtain overall peace in their country. One of the people who did this was Bob Dylan. Dylan expressed his ideas through music and song lyrics as a form of protest against the Vietnam War and other aspects of society. He represents artists who make it their responsibility to stand up for injustice through creative protest and express the rights of citizens to dissent from the government.
Bob Dylan was born on May 24, 1941, in Duluth, Minnesota, and lived there until he was 6. Growing up, Dylan's town had one radio station that disapproved of playing music for the youth. So to get by this, some nights Dylan would walk miles with a small portable radio to get reception from other cities with stations that played rock music.
But when Dylan turned 16, a brand new radio station run by a man named Jim Dandy came to the city of Hibbing, and once a week it played blues music from great musicians like Howlin' Wolf and Lightning Hopkins. When Dylan met Jim Dandy, it turned out that the whole time Jim had been a black man. Dylan was astonished at this because during this time it was not common for black men to be successful in radio.
After high school, Dylan was enrolled in the University of Minnesota. Sometime after his enrollment, Dylan found a group of political activists who gave him exposure to protest folk music. This was Dylan's inspiration for the launch of his career as a folk artist.
Shortly after the launch of his career, Dylan turned 18. This is when he moved to New York City, hoping to fulfill the dream of getting signed by a big record label, which was hard for folk musicians to achieve at the time. Dylan's dreams became real whenever he got signed to Columbia Records in 1961. With the label, Dylan wrote about problems that he felt strongly about, such as racism, war, and poverty. Columbia Records weren't really in agreement with what Dylan chose to write about, but Dylan's agent, John Hammond, fought hard for Dylan to stay with Columbia Records due to knowing how powerful and influential Dylan's music was.
Many citizens in the U.S. deemed the Vietnam War as pointless, since America was fighting against a small country that was never seen as a threat to the United States. Americans also disliked the fact that many Vietnamese and American people were losing their lives senselessly. The Vietnam War was long, costly, and unnecessary conflict that pitted the communist government of North Vietnam against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States.
Dylan and many other artists disagreed with the war, which caused them to speak up by protesting and writing more songs. Dylan was an inspiration to many young people in his time because he helped project their feelings with his music. Overall, Dylan represented them by using his right as an artist to bring attention to problems in the world.
Bob Dylan was one of the most influential musicians of the 1960s, and one of the things that contributed to this title was his role in the civil rights movement.
When the 1963 civil rights movement was brought to the United States, Bob Dylan was gaining more popularity after the release of his album Freewheelin'. This album was mostly about how people needed to advocate for change during the civil rights movement. He used this album to bring light to the out-of-control injustices that were happening to African Americans, such as the hurricane incident.
In addition to his album release, Dylan protested at the March for Jobs in Washington, D.C.
A bullet from the back of a bush took Medgar Evers' blood. His finger finds the trigger to his name. They heard no hit out in the dark. The hand set the spark. Two eyes took the aim.
This was a peaceful protest that Bob Dylan used to project one of his controversial views. The view was that white civilians were not the only ones accountable for their violence towards black civilians. During the time of the civil rights movement, Dylan provided a voice for many who could not voice their opinions on their own. Dylan took it upon himself as an artist with a platform to speak up for those who could not.
Another time Bob Dylan used his right to publish music to represent other people is in the song Hurricane. Hurricane was about a man named Reuben Carter who was wrongfully accused of a triple murder in 1966 and served 20 years in prison for it.
Bob Dylan published the song Hurricane despite the fact his label did not want him to because it would put him at risk to be sued. In the song, Dylan uses powerful lyrics to describe Carter's story. One of the lyrics are, 4 months later, the ghettos are in flame, Reuben's in South America fighting for his name, while Arthur Dexter Bradley's still in the robbery game, and the cops are putting the screws to him, looking for somebody to blame. These lyrics suggest the fact that the police officers who arrested Reuben Carter knew they were wrong, but they still tried to pin evidence against him.
Display of Dylan's selflessness. No matter how much of a toll publishing this song would take on his career, he continued to publish it because he believed Carter's story was worth sharing. This just shows another aspect of Dylan's speaking out for others when they cannot speak out for themselves.
Bob Dylan was one of the first artists to use his power in this way, and with this, Dylan's legacy of getting involved with political problems has even encouraged other celebrities to use their fame to voice their opinions for their fans.
For instance, during this year's 2024 presidential election, Taylor Swift announced on her social media platform that she would be voting for Kamala Harris. In this post, Taylor also attached a link to an official voting registration website so people who had the same beliefs as her could vote alongside her. With this, over 400,000 people who were fans of Taylor clicked on this link, overall giving more publicity to the election.
Another example is Angelina Jolie and her husband Brad Pitt starting a non-profit organization that donated $1 million to Doctors Without Borders. This organization sponsors doctors who care for people affected by conflict, disease outbreaks, and natural disasters. This donation was a great impact because it allows more people who are in need to get help to be able to get access to resources they need.
Another example is celebrity Michael J. Fox starting the Michael J. Fox Foundation. This foundation is a non-profit organization that has raised over $450 million to help fund research for people who have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. A final example would be Leonardo DiCaprio co-writing and producing a documentary about global warming, and even after he has continued to make an effort towards bringing awareness to environmental changes.
Considering all these factors, Bob Dylan was one of the first artists to bring awareness to societal issues, but through the years, his legacy has inspired and influenced many celebrities to do the same, as well as spread awareness to what they believe in.
In December of 2024, a movie named A Complete Unknown was released. The movie talks about Dylan's life when he moved to New York when he was a teenager.
200 people in that room, and each one wants me to be somebody else.
How do you sing then?
I put myself in another place.
And it displays his revolutionary talent, forming his most intimate relationships during his rise to fame. He connects with the folk music movement, making a controversial choice that resonates worldwide.
The movie brought attention back to Dylan this year, showing many people just how revolutionary Dylan is.
Overall, some may argue that Bob Dylan's music was not influential. However, others will say that over his time as an artist, Bob Dylan wrote many protest songs that helped to display younger people's thoughts on events happening during the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and many other controversial situations.
This is first shown in his album Freewheeling about the civil rights movement. This album brought attention towards things happening around the world during the Civil War era. This was considered influential due to the fact that following the release of the album, more people started to protest against the war.
Another time Bob Dylan was influential was when he released his song Hurricane. With this song, Dylan helped spread awareness about the injustice that happened to boxer Reuben Carter when he was wrongfully arrested. Even though Dylan was warned about legal trouble he could get into, he did it anyways.
A while after this song was released, Carter's case got dismissed, resulting in his freedom. This shows Dylan's selflessness and how strong his influence was and his willingness to risk his career for someone else's freedom. Lastly, Dylan says other celebrities have followed in Dylan's footsteps and used their power and fame to spread awareness towards things that they believe in, resulting in their fans supporting those beliefs.
Even though it is important to stand up for what you believe is right, Dylan also sings lyrics such as, "Come gather around people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone if your time to you is worth saving, and you better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are changing."
These lyrics also mean that sometimes you need to be open to certain changes, even if they aren't what you're used to.
Bob Dylan is a great example of musicians using their right to make music while also making it his responsibility to speak up on societal situations that he felt needed attention.
A lover for your life and nothing more.